Kate Holterhoff here, and with me I have a very exciting guest. We've got Chris DeMars. He's a senior developer advocate at TuxCare. Chris, how you doing?
Oh, we are 6 feet above ground and 10 toes down, so can't complain.
Living the life. I know
Yeah,
it's almost the weekend, too. Are you going to be fishing?
I am. I have a derby tomorrow. I have a lot of prep I have to do for it. So in my club, I fish as a co-angler, so I don't use my boat, and I had to take my boat in anyway. So like, there's that. That's a 3-week turnaround. But yeah, first club event of the season is tomorrow. So,
How you feeling?
uh, it depends because so we're getting massages today after work. So like, I got that to look forward
Ooh.
to. But I still have to like get things together and prep all my stuff. And then I gotta wake up at 4 in the morning to go to this lake that's an hour away. So I'm not looking forward to that because I'm not a morning person.
No.
And the
No.
other day I pulled something in my neck and my shoulder, and like it's killing me all through my neck, through my shoulder, all through here. Like I'm in so much pain. So hopefully that
Oh.
works out, and maybe the massage
Yeah.
therapist will help me out. But besides that,
Yeah.
we're good. It's a beautiful day here in Michigan, and can't complain.
Okay. All right. Well, it does seem like fishing is shoulder intensive work, so I hope that they
Yeah,
get you sorted for your big day tomorrow.
yeah,
Okay. Well, very cool. All right. Well, I have invited Chris on here to continue my, I guess, long running series on CVEs and where we're at with security and AI. So Chris and I both attended Vueconf here in Atlanta,
yep.
got to talking about some of the stuff that you guys are doing over at TuxCare. So thought I'd have him on to chat a little bit about this. So let's begin maybe with your background. So
Sure.
introduce yourself for folks who don't know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I've been a front end developer for 30 plus years. I started off writing, I think I started off writing code in like 94, 95. So
Wow.
yeah, a long time. Started off with QBasic, then moved into HTML, and then kind of did that off and on for so many years. And then I got my first gig in 2008 as a contractor, an independent contractor for a local company. And then fast forward to like the 20 teens, I got an official job with benefits and kind of just been going at it ever since. I've sort of been in the DevRel role, officially, unofficially, probably since the 20 teens. I got started off in the Michigan or the Detroit tech community. We used to have meetups all the time, and kind of always did the speaking thing, and then officially got a title of developer advocate 6 years ago. So then I finally started getting paid to do the job. So and here we are, a senior dev advocate at TuxCare.
Amazing. And you're involved in a lot of conferences as well, right?
Oh yeah.
As an organizer?
Yep. So I help to, what do I do? I run a meetup here in Detroit, and then I've helped to run other conferences and meetups in Michigan. I say I work for KCDC. I'm on their speaker selection committee. I used to work for CodeMash on their speaker selection committee. So I kind of keep my hand in all things community.
Okay. Yeah. And, it's a worrying time in developer advocacy. A lot of DevRel folks are looking for work right now. It seems like a story that I keep hearing from folks like you in the industry is that they are just deeply involved in community in this organic way. It sounds like that's kind of how you moved into this role. Are you hearing that as well? Like, what's your sense?
Yeah, I think the people who move into DevRel, they've always just had a community knack to them, right?
Yeah.
Whether that was writing or creating their own video work or just, speaking at meetups, loving a product and just being super technical with it. If it's a super
Hmm.
technical product, I think it just kind of makes sense to move into that. And especially if you're an extrovert. Like I know there are some DAs out there that are introverts and they put on like an extrovert facade when they have to. But being an
Yeah.
extrovert really helps too. And if you like just being around people, and I love being around people, and I love to teach and mentor and learn, and it just makes sense.
And travel too, right?
Yeah, a lot of travel.
That's a big part of it. Okay, interesting. All right, so let's dig into this. So I was interested in the talk that you gave at ViewConf. It was horror themed,
Hmm.
as is right for you, Chris. You always have sort of a good
Yeah.
That's sort of your thing. But what was interesting to me about your abstract is that you talk about typo squatting, dependency confusion, supply chain attacks, and that they're haunting the JavaScript ecosystem specifically. So your front end chops certainly makes that be the case. When I've talked to other folks about the CVE issues, they haven't
Mm.
talked about JavaScript specifically. So where does JavaScript fit into all of these new horrors, if you will,
Yeah.
around security?
So we see it kind of all over the board in all different stacks and languages and libraries and frameworks. Like that's what TuxCare does. We provide patching services for anything open source when we talk about endless lifecycle support. So that's libraries, frameworks, applications. So stuff in Java, Spring. We do PHP, Python. We have a couple solutions for .NET, and then a lot of that too is heavy on the JavaScript side.
Mm,
So we support all different versions of Angular, AngularJS, pretty much everything in AngularJS and everything in Angular up to version 19. We
mhm.
support a couple versions. I think we support one or two versions of Vue, and then we just dropped support for Nux 3 the other day. We support stuff with MongoDB and then the database side of things, even Postgres. So it kind of
Hmm.
just goes all over the board. But a lot of the supply chain attacks that we're seeing recently, they're all stemming from NPM. And NPM, for anybody that's not aware of what NPM is, it's a node package manager, right? So it's a way to install not programs, but projects and utilities and tools inside your applications on the front end, which is mostly all JavaScript. And then you got your HTML and your CSS pieces too, but your JavaScript is the one that does kind of all the cool different things and in the function and stuff like that. So you see a lot of those NPM attacks stemming from people inserting malicious software into already existing projects or people creating typo squatting is a great example. Creating projects, putting them on npm, they're not vetted out, and then someone mistakenly downloading or installing the wrong thing, and then you get your npm attack.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I mean, eh, and so TuxCare specifically, I tend to think of them as dealing more with the Linux kernel, but they're doing a lot with the JavaScript ecosystem. Is that kind of a new thing, or is that that's
So
just
I
always been
think
part of it?
they've been doing ELS for a few years now because
Okay.
the one main big product that we do is kernel care, which is live rebootless patching for Linux distributions. And Alma Linux was a product of ours, and Alma Linux kind of split off to do their own thing. But we offer enterprise support for Alma Linux, so it's a heavy Linux background, yes, but moving
Yeah.
into the patching of all different open source systems.
Right. 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 Okay. And so, what's it like working at a company that does so much with Linux as a front end engineer? Do they have they taken you under their wing and been like, "It's okay, Chris, you belong
I
here."
I stay out of that. I stay out of that area. Like I know how to use Linux. I mean, Linux is under the hood of a Mac is it runs Linux. But like I
Sure.
used to run Ubuntu and Lubuntu back in the day, and just various distributions. So like I know my way around a Linux distribution,
Okay.
and a Linux, the terminal and running Linux commands and stuff like that. But the whole Linux side of things, we have extreme professionals that understand like that infrastructure side of things. So I let them handle it.
All right. Fair enough. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, when it comes to what we hear in the news, couldn't agree with you more. NPM is everywhere. Shai-Hulud, all of these social engineering attacks. I mean, this is big stuff. So it makes
Mhm.
sense that you folks are kind of honed in on the problem of JavaScript and security. So I guess I'm interested in where AI comes into this. So what are you seeing in terms of like how AI is accelerating this? Can you get into any more like granular details? I think everyone knows like arms race, but like, yeah,
Yeah.
what's actually happening?
So I think using AI, if you're just throwing AI at a project to help you build it out, it's going to come along with some issues. Like there are a handful of people out there that are talking about the problems with security in AI, not AI creating secure applications. I wrote a blog post last year on what was it on? I wrote a blog post on creating a Dockerfile, or I don't remember. It was something. So it was a security blog post that I wrote from a personal blog, and I don't have a background using Docker or Kubernetes and like the server, like the engineering side of that piece. So I had Claude write me a Docker file because I was playing around with
Hmm.
Docker and I wanted to kind of set up some environments. So Claude wrote out a Docker file for me, and come to find out, the version of Node that it was pulling in was unsecure. Now this
Uh,
was straight from Claude. Claude gave me this Docker file to use. And so
wow.
I opened up in VS Code and there's a squiggly line under it. I'm like, oh, what the hell is this? So I hovered over it and it said that, hey, there are known vulnerabilities for this specific version of Node. Click this link to go learn more. So I clicked a link in VS Code. It opens up Node's website with their like CVE dashboard. And it was talking about that specific version of Node, how it's not secure. And if you're using it, you need to upgrade or just replace it with um, this other version. I did that in my code. It fixed it, changed it, and then there was no vulnerabilities with that specific Docker file. So I mean, you can still get into issues like that, especially if you don't know what you're reading or you're not staying kind of ahead of what's going on in the NPM world and the JavaScript security world. You might not know, right? Or if your code editor isn't set up to catch things like that, if you're not running NPM audit or Yarn audit, you're not gonna be able to see these things. So there is a big piece to that, and I'm still trying to catch up on the whole Mythos Glasswing
Mm,
thing, right? I think it's all
yeah.
through Anthropic and how like they identified like their AI tooling identified like really old CVEs and vulnerabilities that are out there
Hmm.
for projects that like nobody has even identified or discovered. And it's causing a
Right.
lot of issues across the board, right? So I always look at it like Skynet, right? Do we really want Skynet to happen? So
No,
no,
don't think so.
exactly, and we could be going that way. I mean, I don't know.
Oh,
I was
geez.
at a conference in San Jose, and they had robots there, and I'm like, this is like seeing it live in person is totally different than watching like a YouTube short or something of like
Huh.
those little robots and like the little dogs that run around.
Yeah.
It's a little trippy to see it in real life.
I'm not ready. Uh,
No,
yeah. Uh, okay. Well, tell me this. So there's been jokes that developers don't care about security,
no,
where it's like, don't want to think about it. And it's not till you get like a real enterprise job, right? You know, wear a suit.
yeah,
They suddenly developers are like, oh, geez, got to
yep,
do stuff with compliance and governance and all this. Do do you think? I mean, you can disagree with me if that's not if that's not your supposition,
hmm
but is AI changing that? Are developers suddenly like, whoa, security? Well, that matters.
I mean, I think so.
Yeah.
But it's
Okay.
surprising how many people that I've spoken to and that we've spoken to at conferences that are unaware they're running end of life software or that they
Oh,
have vulnerabilities in it or like they're using Claude or Codex or whatever to vibe code their systems, yet they're not being cognizant of what is getting pulled in. And if they're
yeah.
running, oh, like, hey, yeah, we're running this old version of this or old versions of that, and oh, we're not familiar with end of life or what ELS stands for. There is a big push, I think, now to start start worrying more about security because AI. I also say too, and I talk about this with friends. Back in the day, we used to read books. Like you know this. You're a doctor. We used to read books. you know,
Sure. Yeah.
I have a
Read a
huge
few.
library of web development books.
Yeah.
All AI is, it's just grabbing old reference material from
Mm,
digitized books and blog posts and in tutorial sites and stuff, right? It's grabbing that kind of stuff and just throwing it into your code base.
yeah.
So you got to really like, if it's going to pull something that's a couple years old, now that's end of life, you really have to be specific with how you're using the AI
Mm,
and prompting it and being extremely, extremely specific. At least from what I've heard and what I've been learning, trying to use it for some like little side projects.
okay. Well, that's interesting because that's like a whole culture shift then. But yeah, that makes sense about the fact that developers maybe it's almost becoming an education issue. It's like maybe they might care, but they
Yeah.
don't know that this is
Right.
even a problem. And
Yep.
frankly, all of us have whiplash. Like nobody can keep up on all the different
No.
things going on. As I've been writing about CVEs, I feel like I learn about two extra for every one that I'm trying to investigate. I'm like,
Right.
oh well, Jesus, I didn't even know about all that. So yeah, I mean, even folks who ostensibly are experts in this are still trying to like play catch up.
hmm
So that all makes sense. So there's an education aspect. Um, there also seems like creating making the right thing to do the easy thing to do. I'm thinking of like Vercel. I've got some little hobby projects on there, and then all of a sudden they were like, no, we can't update this because you're on the wrong Node version, and then they made
hmm
me update stuff. So I feel like
Yeah.
there's ways that we've got like golden paths being integrated. I don't know. What's your sense there? Is it like, do you have to like hold the hand of these developers, or are you doing it more as like a gentle, like a carrot situation rather than a stick of like, here's some resources?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of resort to, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah,
You
sure.
can talk about it all day long. You can hold hands with people, but unless they take the time and effort to upgrade their systems,
Yeah.
or use a company like ours, or even just investigate things, they're not going to do it. And why is that?
Mm,
Because it eats up time.
yeah.
And like I said in my talk, like, we don't care, and I'll throw myself into that too. We don't care about performance or accessibility or security until shit
Mm,
hits the fan. We just
yeah.
don't. And there's multiple reasons for that. It's resources, or it's time and money and Jira sprints and deadlines and all these various little factors that come into play. We're not always thinking about that, right? Like, oh, we got to get this feature done in 2 weeks. Well, we have to worry about security, performance, and accessibility of this feature. Oh, we don't have time for that. We got to just get it out the door. So that's when you get into the whole cutting corners thing. And I'm not a fan of cutting corners. So,
Well, CVEs aren't new. These have been around for a while.
mhm.
So when you say that patching is more important than ever, with the mythos and all of that, what specifically has changed, would you say? Is it just the acceleration, or is there anything else that you've detected as being like part of this big, what, seismic shift in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's really more awareness around it
Okay.
now more than ever, because it
Awareness.
seems like every day we wake up, there's a new NPM attack
Yeah. Yes.
somewhere that is now just coming to fruition. When I really didn't see a whole pattern of that prior to kind of for Mythos and Glasswing and all these other shifts in security. Like, if you were to ask me last year, oh, what pattern do you see with NPM attacks? I'm like, well, I didn't see anybody really talking about them on LinkedIn or Blue Sky or Twitter. And
Mm-hmm.
now, with the advent of this other AI tooling that has just recently come out, now we're seeing, oh, hey, there's this NPM attack and there's this NPM attack and this happened the other day and this happened the other day and there's a new Shai-Hulud worm, and you're just seeing it more and more and more. NPM was hacked, or this package was installed and it was an extension, and that happened at Vueconf. I found out about that NPM VS Code attack,
Mm.
and I couldn't open VS Code. Like, I closed it just to like do something, and I couldn't open it again. I'm like, oh shit, this isn't good.
Wow.
Then eventually, a couple hours later, I fired up VS Code, and it started. It upgraded itself. It did a bunch of other weird shit, and I was like, oh, maybe this was unintentional, and they just did like a full reset, at GitHub.
Wow.
So, or Microsoft. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Uh, it does make you wonder, because I'll tell you what, I've been doing a lot of updates on everything. We're
Hmm.
recording this on Riverside, and before we recorded this, I had to update my little app here, my desktop app. So
Yeah.
you do wonder if what the rationale is going on behind the scenes with a lot of these
Right.
companies, all your SaaS products.
Yep.
Okay, well that's good. Okay, so the CVEs thing is interesting, because it's kind of a specific way of framing this, and
Hmm.
CVEs. So some of the research I've done recently has been on how CVEs are a lagging indicator. Um, so yes, so we've got a lot of products that are trying to find bugs. Bugs are one thing, but CVEs are a whole other thing. And of course, the support from NIST and the government and all these things are part of that. So yeah, just in terms of like CVEs specifically, are you seeing that as being fundamentally changing, or is that something that like you deal with a lot at TuxCare, or is that just kind of wrapped into like the updates and the patches and all that?
I think there's more and more CVEs that are coming out now, because every time I
Okay,
turn around, I'm seeing something with like CVE 2026,
right.
right?
Got to
Um,
number them.
right. And then as far as like the patching goes, like the second we hear about it or find out about it, like, we have an amazing security team full of researchers
Okay.
and engineers, like security, like front end engineers that strictly work in security, and back end engineers that
Yeah.
strictly work in the back end, like in Java and Python or whatever. And it just comes along with the whole patching scenario, the whole
Mhm.
CVE thing. It's identified by these bigger companies, these security companies, and then it kind of just trickles down. And then when we find out about it, or other companies find out about it, then they start doing the patching process. But
Okay.
I keep seeing it more and more, and that just comes with the NPM attacks because a lot of that is
Yeah.
stemming from that area of the front end.
All right. So, and I get that you're not necessarily on the research team there, but your sense is that the CVEs are still a worthwhile thing to follow, that trying to get ahead of them is, or treat them like a lagging indicator is not your approach at the moment, that you're like, okay, we're going to follow the CVEs. We're not going to be doing like extra searching the way that some of these other tools have done.
Yeah, I think just finding out the CVE, and I can't
Yeah,
speak for the security team, but finding out
that's
what the
fine.
CVEs are and then patching those is
Yeah.
like the main priority for the end of life stuff, right? Or even
Okay.
if stuff like nowadays, even if it's not end of life for a
Yeah.
product that we just launched, Secure Chain, even before it's end of life, we'll still keep you patched until it's end of life. So any new
Okay.
CVEs that are identified for newer versions of anything that might not go end of life for 2 years, we will still patch that and keep you patched
Wow.
until it goes end of life and then continue to help you still.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. When I've talked to other security experts, like I had Tanya Jenka on the podcast, she talked about there's a sort of disconnect between finding them and then like fixing them. And so
Hmm.
you're on the fixing side, which seems absolutely necessary. That finding them is becoming easier, maybe, or there's more of them being found. I don't know.
Yeah.
So finding them is one part of it, but fixing is
Yeah.
another. And maybe we
Yep.
can even add to that, like distributing the fix, right? Okay,
Yeah.
fine, it's fixed over here, but then if all these are running outdated versions, then it doesn't matter if you fixed it intellectually and it needs to
Right.
be fixed in production.
Yeah. When they're identified, there's a process behind it, and it's got to go through a handful of different steps until it's
Yeah.
kind of like certified, right? With the CVE, like the CVE identifier and all that. Then there's a bunch of metadata that goes along with it. And then you have your companies that are taking those CVEs, doing the identification, the research work, fixing them, and then distributing them out to customers or open source or however it is. The way we do it is we have a private registry through Sonar, and then when you get a token from us after you talk to sales or whatever, you get a token. You set up an npmrc file. This is at least how it works for the front end. You set up an
Mm-hmm.
npmrc file with your token that points to our registry, and then you delete your package lock and your node modules. Once you copy and paste our dependencies into your package JSON and replace your dependencies that it came along with, you run npm install, and then it brings all those patch dependencies over, and then we
Mm,
keep you patched as the source of the company that you're using until you figure out your kind of own migration plan, because that could take a very, very long time. We don't want you to stick with us forever, right? We're essentially a patch while you figure out your own patching strategy and upgrade plan moving forward.
okay. How much of the way that you talk about it brings in the idea of modernization? Like, is that part of how you're formulating it, or is it purely in terms of like patches and I don't know what?
It's mostly patching unless you're using modern applications. But I mean everything, unless the vendor or the community is fully supporting the product,
Hmm.
chances are there's going to be a CV out there. Like
Okay.
the latest version of Angular. I got chances are if you were to install the latest version of Angular and all the tooling that comes along with it, it will show that there's zero vulnerabilities in it, because that is
Okay.
still, it's not end of life yet. It's community supported, and it's also supported by Angular, the vendor supported,
Hmm.
with their own team of security people that are fixing these things.
Yeah.
So modernization is great if you kind of want to stay ahead of, you know, uh like attacks, but usually it's stuff that's older that people have installed that they can't, fix right away. That's where the rest of that comes into play.
Okay. Yeah. And of course, there's good reasons why folks stay on older versions of Java and all these,
Yeah.
whatever sort of legacy
Right.
technologies. And so, yeah, I'm sympathetic to the folks who are like, we just cannot do it. Well, another part of this that we haven't talked about is like open source. So, what is it that I don't know. How are you addressing the open source maintainers who are feeling a lot of burnout right now? They're dealing with AI slop. Does TuxCare like contribute upstream? Like, what's their sort of position with the open source community? Talk to me about that.
So most of it is just working with, so like we just got into the open source, what is it? Open source software Open Source Software Federation. I forgot what it's
Okay.
called. The let's see, not now. The Open Source Security Foundation. So we just became a
Ah,
part of that. We're gold members of that, which is super huge. So I mean, we're giving back as much as we can with open source
sure.
software. Like we won't be able to take all of our products and put them out there for everybody, right? Because there's no
Hmm.
way you can make money that way. Um, and some of the stuff, it could be proprietary, but chances are it's not. But it all depends on languages and frameworks. But
Yeah.
we're giving back to the community. We're supporting these open source pieces. So that's pretty much kind of the brunt of what we're doing in the open source community.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So with your chops in Linux, I can imagine that that would be a particular open source project that you would spend a lot of time on. Yeah, open source is in such an interesting place right now. I've had folks like Daniel Stenberg, the creative curl, on the podcast talk about AI slop. Bug bounty programs are all sort of falling apart right now. I mean, they're the perverse incentives for inundating these projects with these potential CVEs that just are nothing burgers. So I don't know. My heart goes out to the open source maintainers that are trying to figure this out right now.
Yeah, I mean, open source maintainers, they've always had that kind of weight on their shoulders, and
Hmm.
it just comes along with open source. Like if you're going to build a product and you're going to put it out there for everybody to use, there's going to be shit that you're going to have to carry on your back, right?
Yeah.
People bitching about things in the issues and people bitching in pull requests and oh this sucks and that sucks and you need to fix this and we need this feature, we need this feature. Like
Right.
there's always going to be that overhead. And
Mm.
you just take that on. And then with the advent of all this AI stuff, now all these security vulnerabilities coming out, like it's ramped up that burden, I guess you could say, tenfold. Because now you
Yeah.
have to worry about all this other shit that, yeah, we had to worry about it, in the past, but with the advent of AI and AI slop and vibe coding and the security stuff coming out, there's like 10 times more things you have to be worried about and maintain as a maintainer if you want your product to thrive.
Okay. Is TuxCare like how many customers do you talk to who are like enterprise, and how many are more just like I don't know, like digital marketing agencies or smaller SaaS companies?
I would say a majority of them are all enterprise, like they're big
Wow.
companies. So
Okay.
Dell, Menards, like if you were to look at like the logos of the companies that we work with, they're all
Yeah.
big, 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 big companies. I think Cisco, we do a lot with military and academia. So
Ah.
that side, maybe not so much enterprise, but the big, big companies, like I said, like Dell, Menards, um, they're the ones that are really in need because a lot of these companies are using enterprise legacy,
Yeah.
software, and they can't upgrade right away, or they don't have the means to do it right away. You see that a
Mm-hmm.
lot. So usually the grassroots startups, they're trying to use the best of the best of the best of the best. And nothing
Right.
that's end of life, right? Because they have to do that to get ahead of the game. These big companies, these enterprises, they're enterprises for a reason. They're already established. So they don't have to use the newest, shiniest thing and flavor of the week.
Yeah, yeah. But the security needs have shot way up, so then
Right.
suddenly okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. I wonder if AI and the fact that, like, migrating legacy code bases is becoming easier? I mean, code is cheap now, right? Um, is that something that you're seeing where we talk about how there's just going to be so much code written, like the
Yeah.
amount is huge.
Right.
Are you seeing that like there is a move to not use TuxCare, but like
Yeah.
get past this to actually use the non legacy versions?
Haven't heard much, even from people at conferences, about
Wow.
like, oh yeah, hey, we're using AI to upgrade our systems. Like, I
Okay.
think people take a step back and just see what has happened with AI and the issues that do come along with it. And you'd have to jump through so many hoops in an enterprise
Yeah.
company. I've worked for plenty of enterprises in the years past, and hell, even to get Slack on your computer, you had to go through a whole meeting and put a slide deck together and get a committee, like talk to the committee, right? And the committee had to vote yes or no. And there, everybody, like different security people are within the committee and architects. And I think it would be more headache to try and be like, hey, listen, we're
Okay.
going to use Claude and upgrade our old Java systems to the newest one. Like, how many other systems does that system touch? Right. In effect,
Yeah.
like it's a bigger conversation than having just a website with a product that a startup would use. And like, oh, hey, we're using this version of Angular, even though it's not end of life, but the newest version just dropped. So we're just going to vibe code and have Claude or Codex
Yeah.
change everything from
Uh-huh.
Angular version 22 to Angular version 23, right? It's
Yeah.
less overhead, especially if you only have 5 people at your company.
Oh, yeah. No, this is good. I know. When I hear that things are drop-in replacements, I just go, I don't think
Right.
so.
No. And there, I mean, even back in the day though, before AI was a huge thing, when Bootstrap was really big and everybody was using Bootstrap, Bootstrap version 2 to version 3, everything changed. The whole
Okay.
syntax changed. So people tried to just drag and drop Bootstrap
Yeah.
3 in, and it broke everything. And that wasn't even
Wow.
AI. That was manually going through that process of, pulling in, like if you were to use the CDN, the Bootstrap 3 CDN, and replace the Bootstrap 2 CDN. Well, nothing's going to work because the syntax totally changed 180. So you had
Yeah.
to go back through and then change everything up manually, change all your code, change all the syntax to match that new version. There are such thing as breaking changes. There's a reason we have that term. Breaking changes is just that. So if you were to take a version of Angular, you just say, "Oh, hey, Claude, upgrade this to the newest version of Angular from this version." You might have syntax changes, you might have new features, you might have things that worked one way in this version that aren't going to work the same way in the next version. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done when it comes to situations like that.
Yeah. It makes me think of there were some high profile reports around Cloudflare building new versions of software. So they made a version of WordPress and Next.
Yeah,
Uh, and some of the podcasts that I listened to, folks had actually tried to use it, and there's of course no documentation,
right.
and it didn't work. But it does make you wonder about like, are folks doing it to replace some of these libraries that maybe they've been pulling in just to make sure that their dependencies are less heavy. I don't know,
Right.
make the surface area a little bit less
Yeah.
broad.
Mhm.
But in these enterprise settings, like the majority of developers, it sounds like what you're seeing is that they're not doing this. We're not shifting everything left. We're not modernizing at the speed that
Yeah.
maybe we've been promised.
And then that's what we've seen, at least
Yeah.
personally that I've seen at conferences, that, oh, we're on these older versions of this. We need to get off that, and or we're running end of life software and we're going through the whole upgrade process, but it's taking longer. Like if you're going to use AI to do that, it's not going to take, I mean, I would think it wouldn't take that long to do it. You just let it run, or you run the agents, or how many credits you have for your AI, and then it'll just do it, right? You're not manually doing that. But I think there's a lot of companies that are still out there in the enterprise that are doing that manual shift over to try to get out of legacy systems or even upgrade to a newer version of a legacy system because they just can't go, full board.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, in terms of some of the regulation around this too, because we've got some big legislation coming through, especially in the EU. There's the CRA. Is that something that you're seeing folks be concerned about? Like, so the EU Cyber Resilience Act, is that come up at all in the conversations you're having?
Oh, I have when the times I've been in the EU, I don't think I've talked to anybody
Wow.
personally that has, and that's just another thing. Like
Just another thing. Yeah.
developers aren't thinking about compliance
Right.
either, right? Like we have a lot of compliance here in the US. We have HIPAA and SOC 2, but it's
Hmm.
compliance changes all over the world. Right? And if you're just not
Yeah.
staying ahead of it and you're just really just not concerned, or you're just not aware and you're not educated on it. You just don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And I don't
Right.
think I ever heard anybody, whether I've been in London or Germany or anywhere that has talked specifically to me about compliance. Maybe a couple other people that I work with at the booth have talked about compliance with them, but nothing specifically around EU compliance. But maybe that's
Hmm.
because they know I'm from the States and I might not know, right? The people that I'm
Yeah.
working with at the booth, when I'm overseas, they're from the area. So they would be more, tuned
Yeah.
into EI or EU compliance and EU governance, stuff like that.
Yeah. No, I think anyone listening to this podcast recognizes that this is a qualitative conversation. You haven't seen it all. You're not bringing your, you don't got your numbers in front of you. That's fine.
Right.
I think it's just important to have these kind of conversations to try to get,
Definitely.
get a sense of what folks are seeing. Because
Yep.
I think what the vendors are telling the analysts and potential consumers is often very different than what developers who are actually in the
Right.
trenches are doing and seeing. I mean, another good example of that, I think, has to do with. So, of course, there have been a number of layoffs, and folks are trying to blame AI on this. I don't tend to see that as the cause for kind of the reasons that you've articulated here. That AI isn't. It might be an accelerator, but there's still a number of bottlenecks. Folks aren't modernizing everything, et cetera. Um, but it does. One of the promises that I heard is hilarious to me as a former QA engineer, which is that everybody's going to spend all this time working on their backlogs and that they're going to improve the code smell of these legacy systems. And they're going to spend all this time on things that don't make money, basically.
Hmm.
And I just find that to be extremely idealistic and potentially just untrue. As a QA engineer, we were always the last people to touch the code, and many of the things that would have been good to have fixed didn't get fixed. I mean, you've mentioned accessibility.
Hmm.
Accessibility is a huge one, right? I mean, to
Yeah.
talk about
Oh
things
yeah.
like fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
So have you seen have you seen companies addressing these backlogs the way that I've been sold?
Not really. I mean, from
Yeah,
my experience, just being like, I'll put my front end hat on, like addressing the back. Someone's got to give a shit. You know what I mean?
I
Or
do.
the debt, the technical debt is going to stack, and it's going to stack, and it's going to stack, and the backlog is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if nobody cares, nobody's going to bring it up. Nobody's going to say, "Hey, we have this issue with performance. We have this security issue, or this feature is broken, or the accessibility of this is not what it needs to be." Those issues live in a backlog because if nothing, if everything is a priority, right? If everything's a priority, then nothing is a priority.
Yeah.
And backlogs need to be focused on more. And I've worked heavily, very, very close with QA people at other companies. Like I love working with QA. I hated QA and I loved QA because QA just had to try to break my shit. And if I had it my way, I would just ship it. But I was also
Yeah.
under the mind frame that if there is not a QA team, and I was big on making sure that companies that I worked for had QA teams. And when they said, "Oh, we're not hiring QA," it's like, so you're going to trust your developer to say it works? They're not going to break their own shit. They want to
Hmm.
continue moving on with the next feature, or pull the
Yeah.
next thing off the board, or something out of the backlog. They're not going to fully test the product or their feature. They're just not going to do it because they're going to want to keep moving and moving and moving and moving and moving to get a product out the door. That's why QA is so important. And I think it's extremely important, not just for QA, but for developers to say, "Hey, we need to start pulling this stuff off the backlog." There could be all these various issues, accessibility, performance, security, features, anything that needs to get fixed. And that's a huge important piece.
Hmm. Um, so we've talked about the fact that the just upgrade advice isn't any more realistic than it ever has been.
Right.
And yeah, and that the companies that you're talking to at least are not all moving to take care of this. Yeah, these legacy systems, that there still is this need to patch and to maintain. Um, so I'm interested. One of the keywords that you mentioned earlier was about live patching. For my small front end brain, could you explain what that means? Why does it have to be live?
Yeah. So one of the reasons it has to be live is there's a lot of big systems out there that are running Linux distributions, right? Like big, big systems.
Okay.
If you take that down, now the system is down entirely, right?
Okay. Yeah, that sounds bad.
So with live rebootless, and I mean, you could think of it as in medical scenarios and anything. Like you can't take these systems down, like
Yeah.
or supply chain and like a warehouse in manufacturing, or like UPS or DHL or FedEx. Like these systems can't be taken down because the second they're taken down, now you have all these other issues that are going to arise, or just anything can happen. So the way rebootless patching, and it's for the Linux distributions that we do, your organization connects to our servers, and then it pings the server. I think it's every 4 hours, and checking for kernel patches, and it'll check that every so often, and then if it finds one, it pulls it in and patches the kernel within nanoseconds of your
Hmm.
system. So there is really no downtime at all, and it happens live without having to do a reboot.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
mean it's extremely high level stuff that
Yeah,
happens.
that's fine.
From what I know, we patch it within nanoseconds. Your servers talk to ours, and then like I think it's every 4 hours, and then
Yeah,
yeah, see if there's a patch for the kernel and pulls it in, and boom.
man. Well, to go to your movie references, I'm imagining like in Jurassic Park how they have to set turn the whole system off and then go
Yep,
across the park and the dude gets eaten by the velociraptors, but they have to
yep,
like turn it off and the arms hanging from it and the whole thing.
yep,
So this is to avoid having anyone die by dinosaurs
yeah.
by having to
I'm
turn it
actually
off and
thinking
back
about
on.
writing a blog post on patching and Jurassic Park. And the reason, because I love Jurassic Park, I love the whole Jurassic Park franchise, the Jurassic World franchise, except for Dominion and
Yeah.
Rebirth. Jurassic Park 3 sucked. But I worked at a company a few years ago, and our director of demand gen, she wrote a blog post on how like all the issues that Jurassic Park had could have been avoided if they would have just used feature flags, because the company I worked for was a feature flag company. So, and it was an awesome article. I loved it. And
Yeah.
I was talking to my girlfriend the other night. I'm like, I could probably write a blog post on Jurassic Park and security patching and
Oh
end of
yeah.
life or end of endless lifecycle support. Because a lot of the issues they had, like when Nedry put in that virus, maybe there's something there that I could bring in the Jurassic Park world with patching. So I'm thinking about it.
You absolutely should. That's my go-to reference for any Unix, whatever, clicking the things.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, is there a more iconic turning a system on and off?
It's the best on off. Like, did you turn it on and off reference in the world, right?
It absolutely is. I know. I love this so much. Okay. Well, I think on that note, let's go ahead and wrap up this conversation here. So how can folks keep up with you, Chris? Like,
Ooh.
what's your social stuff?
Let's see. So you can catch me on Twitter, Sultan Burnham, SaltnBurnem. If you're a Supernatural fan, you'll understand the reference. You can catch me on Blue Sky, ChrisDeMars.net, LinkedIn, Chris DeMars, if we're in a Slack channel. Twitter is probably the best way to get a hold of me, though, because I'm always on Twitter. I always say, we're always working so many hours just keeping up with what's going on Twitter and the security world and the front end world. So Twitter is probably the best bet, but you can get at me anywhere else.
Fair enough. Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, I've really enjoyed speaking with you today. Again, my guest has been
Thank you.
Chris DeMars. Again, my name is Kate Holterhoff. I'm an analyst at RedMonk. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and review the Monkcast in your podcast platform of choice. If you're watching us on RedMonk's YouTube channel, please like, subscribe, and engage with us in the comments.